Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for episodes 6 and 7 of The Skeleton Crew, Zero Friends again, and we're going to be in so much trouble. Of course, with the finale coming up tomorrow night, I had to make sure I got this in at the last minute, as I've done pretty much this entire series, because they premiere at like 9 p.m. and then it's just like, oh, well, I guess I'll see you. Yeah, I'll do it when I do it, because that's, when I get my daughter, actually. So based on my schedule, 9 p.m. on Tuesday is just like, that just doesn't really work for me. So I wish they would go back to just doing it where it premieres on the day. I feel like I probably said this in every single review because it's just like, man, it's almost annoying that it shows up so late. Sometimes I just don't even bother watching because I'm like, I don't really want to start at 9 o'clock at night, even though it's shorter. I just want to like watch it during a time when I'm more comfortable. Like I'd rather watch it while I'm eating versus it being literally the last thing I do at the end of the night. And then it just changes it up for me. But the show's really good, fortunately. So it is what it is, and I'm definitely loving it. I'm very excited for this finale, but of course, kicking things off just to start with episode 6, of course, the kids end up just basically being dropped out the back of the mountain because for whatever reason, the final trap, and I mentioned this in my last review, is like, obviously they'll escape in some way, shape, or form. It would be something where it's like, you kind of just get tortured or whatever, and maybe the 100 years ago or whatever, when the trap was initially made, there wasn't just like a ladder structure to just kind of climb right back up. So maybe it was a lot more deadly where there wasn't a structure built into the side of the mountain where you could just climb a long ladder. Even though it was tough, it's not really meant to be climbed, but it was still possible. So maybe 100 years ago, when that was the case, you're just pooped out at the bottom of a mountain and it's like, oh, well, I don't know how to get back to my ship. Like there's like, you just can't do it. So maybe back then it was definitely a lot more deadly. But in this episode, the kids, get shot out at the end, and it's like, all right, we have to find out what in the world we're going to do. Fern is like, hey, there's our ship. We just climb straight up. Not that big of a deal. Wim, of course, has a different idea. It's like, well, what if we follow these little these little crab people? They're talking to us. They're sentient. Clearly they're nice. And it's like, all right, that's not really going to work. So of course they split up, and then they do like kind of the swapping of the pairs where Neil ends up going with Fern and KB ends up going with Wim. So we get to see the pairings finally, balance themselves out. And of course, Fern and KB end up having, their little bit of an issue where it's like, hey, this isn't really what I want to do. I don't think we should do this. And we end up finding more out about that through Wim's interaction with KB, where it's like, yeah, I'm not as strong as she believes I am. Like I have these issues. And of course the issue that they brought up before, like, oh, like the steam can mess up my circuits and stuff like that. And I was curious, and this episode definitely solidified it because I was super curious. I was like, how serious like are these components? Like how far does it go where it's like a crucial element to her existing? I would, as a humanoid character. Obviously none of these characters are human. So it was interesting in this one for sure. And I don't know if they probably won't really get into it. And I personally don't know the exact specifics behind why characters are like that in Star Wars. And the only other character that's really like that is the dude from Empire Strikes Back. And of course, I can't remember his name right now, but he's the only other character. And I always thought, of course, because he just pops up and is like, oh, he's, obviously back in the day. Every time I see that, it's like the Geordie LaForge thing. I instantly go to Star Trek for that very specific thing. Is Star Trek first and then Star Wars. But that was it. And it was like, he has the thing and then the visor comes down. And I always kind of thought it was just like maybe an augmentation. It's Star Wars. Like characters have that stuff. I mean, not to quote, or reference the Book of Boba Fett, but those kids, that was like their whole thing. They were like had augmentations and all that good stuff. But in this episode, we do find out that it's very crucial for KB to make sure like these components are very secure, because she'll basically die. Like she mentions like, oh, like I almost powered down. I'm like, okay, well, what, I would love to go into the mechanics of that. I'm sure, I could look up that information. I'm sure it's been out there in Star Wars, somewhere on the internet forever, exactly what the specifics are. But I was curious, like how serious it was of a role it was going to end up playing. And they definitely showed like, hey, she can flat out die. Like if she basically doesn't have this specific spot is like a straight up battery, she can just power it down. And then, especially being out in the cold, she'd be dead. Like that's pretty much it. It's game over. So of course, as they end up going on their half of the journey, they end up bonding a little bit more, and we find out what was going on with KB. And going through that process, they bond a little bit. And then of course, Wim's idea was technically really wrong, but it did end up saving KB. So like everyone's plan worked in a different way than they anticipated, because going to the other side of things with Fern and Neil was absolutely petrified. And Fern had to basically make a rope to kind of hold on to him so he wasn't as scared. And then, of course, when they see that their ship is being dragged down, that's how they're able to actually get it, because they land on the little, moving platforms, and then they get to their ship and then do that just in time for Wim and KB to end up being attacked by a giant crab monster. He's like, oh, you guys suck. Like, you guys tricked us. And so all the plans end up coming together. KB was saved by Wim and his plan, even though the ending of their plan was horrible. And then, of course, Neil and Fern end up saving both of them through their plan, which didn't go the way they thought, because it was like, well, we'll just climb straight up and then everything will be fine. And then they had to kind of jump ship because they were, taking the ship to the scrapyard. And then, of course, we have the actual scrapyard moment where we find out what the deal is with this whole destruction button. And I thought it was a really cool idea. And it turns out that the ship that they have is this really cool, well, we find out in the next episode that it's actually a Republic ship. But I love the way they did that, where it looks like this big, bulky freighter, and then they detach it so that they aren't, basically ripped to shreds. And then it just pulls out and it's like this pretty shiny little ship. I highly doubt anything's going to happen with that suddenly in episode 8, but I was kind of hoping, I was like, oh, that's a much sleeker looking ship. I thought they were going to have a moment where it was like, hey, now that it's kind of dropped its hull, it's going to have a much sleeker profile to it. Well, not profile, because that's just visual, but just performance is what I meant. So I was like, oh, they're going to do something, because now that it's kind of shed its weight, they'll be like, oh, now I know how to maneuver the ship better and stuff like that, or at least just have a moment where they practice with it. And that sadly didn't end up happening, because I was like, oh, the ship looks, way cooler. And like, I'm excited to see it do something. And it doesn't do much. Like they fly through the storm in episode 7, but they kind of just flew straight down. It was pretty much it. They didn't have to maneuver out of the way or do anything really special. Like, they were in the special ship already. So I was like, man, I was kind of hoping that we'd have like a nice little, like at least like a small little battle moment where they use the new version of their ship. And so I was like, that kind of sucks, because I think it looks really cool. It's kind of the classic like all silver design, and it just looks kind of sleek. But I thought it was pretty nice. It was definitely decent. Something that I think is interesting once it did drop the hull, and I only know this because I've recently played the game, but it kind of reminded me of the Mantis from the Jedi games. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It doesn't have like the giant fin that shoots straight up, but like the regular design of the rest of the ship, I was like, that kind of looks like the Mantis from like, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. So I personally thought that was really cool. And that was a connection. Like, I made that connection like over the weekend. I was like, the ship from, Skeleton Crew kind of looks like this ship without the giant fin. So that's what I thought. If I look at them side by side, I'm sure there's a huge difference. But from what I recall, having seen it like 2 weeks ago now, it kind of looks like the ship except for in all silver. So I thought it was really cool. Like I said, I was somewhat hoping that they would, kind of go the route of doing a cool little space battle. But sadly, that doesn't end up happening, which doesn't end up being too much of a problem going into episode 7, because episode 7 was absolutely insane. And it's like, okay, Jod has been captured. Of course, it's like, what's going to happen? He tells the whole story. It's like, hey, we're going to go to this planet. we're going to have all the money we could possibly want. The mint is on this planet. I know where to go. I know how to, like all this pirate treasure and all these great, like the ultimate legend of space pirates amongst all of these characters. They know where it's at. And of course, Jod has to convince everybody to let him live. And it's like, all right, let's see what happens. And so they get to the planet and it's like a giant maelstrom, and it's like, okay. And he has to, keep playing this role. It's like, come on, you can't be that stupid. Like, obviously it's in there. Like, what does the legend say? Like, oh, it's hidden. Like, there you go. It's right in front of us. It's just fake. And of course they send somebody in, and as soon as they die, excuse me, it's like, It's like, okay, we're tossing him out the airlock. But of course he talks his way out of it again. And it's like, I got it. It's the ship. We have to use that ship in order to get through. And of course that does end up being the case. The kids get on the ship and they ultimately end up being captured. They end up making their way off of the ship as well. I love the way that they kind of do a little bit of a loophole. It's like, it's close enough. And then, 33 ends up beating everybody up and, they get on the ship. And it's like, okay, I'm curious how this is going to end up playing out. Found out that it's a Republic ship. I think we found out that, as they're landing. But they're going through, they're being chased down, but everybody else is getting destroyed. It's like, okay, we're about to do it. Like, it's about to happen. They get to the, their actual planet, which turns out it seems super tiny. Like, this giant maelstrom is ridiculously huge. So I thought that was really interesting because I assumed that it was just like a little bit of a cover, but it was a huge force field. And then the planet was like way inside of it. And I was like, oh, this thing is like a gas giant. And then the planet is like this big inside of like this huge ball. And I was like, that's actually kind of cool. Like, it was even cooler than I thought because I just assumed that it was like their actual atmosphere and just like, right above it, and it was like this, defense storm. And it turned out it was a huge storm all the way around. And then the planet is just like this itty bitty pebble inside of all this giant open space. Like there's so much space between the maelstrom and the actual planet that I was like, that's crazy. And then, they went up in the middle of the night and then they just shot out into space. I was like, they didn't see like the storm on the outside, all that stuff. They were just like, and they were gone. So it was interesting seeing the planet look so small inside of this giant defense mechanism that they have. And then of course, Jod makes his appearance known, and it seemed like, it's like, okay, how's this going to play out? He's got the kids. And then 33 is like, oh, this is about to happen, huh? And he gets up, and sadly, and they could fix him. It's totally possible. I mean, technically they only chopped his head off. He was already forgetting stuff. They could, they could fix him back up. But he goes for Jod, and Jod was just like, all right, let's just, like, I'm not even about to bother with this. Boom, chops his head off with a lightsaber. Amazing moment, because it was cool to see a lightsaber used in that way, especially a blue lightsaber, because it's like, those are the good lightsabers. And technically what he did was a villainous thing. It's always fun to have like the most minute changes where it's like, oh, a blue lightsaber or a green lightsaber is used for something evil. It's just fun. So that was a great moment. And then he's just pissed off at the kids, and it's like, just your incessant whining. And of course, he looks at women, like, you're the worst one. And that was kind of harsh, and it made him cry. And it was just like, the message that they got from their parents, he was super happy that they got to see that. Of course, that's before everything ended up taking place where they escaped to the planet. It was like, I'm glad that your parents sent out that message. I'm glad we were able to see that. Now I know who to chop down. And I was like, okay, that's a bit of a threat. But then as the episode went on, it was like, okay, that's, no big deal. They end up getting to the planet. He's like, keep the kids on the ship. They go down to the mint. They have, I think they mentioned they have like thousands of vaults, and who knows how many billions upon trillions of credits they have. And he does a thing where he takes one off the top, and for some, they do the treasure falling, even though it made literally no sense whatsoever, because he took like a solid rectangle off of a giant rectangle, and then all of them just started falling. I was like, that doesn't make any sense physically, but it was meant to be like he's got all the doubloons. So I was like, okay, I understand why they did that, but visually I was just like, that physically makes no sense whatsoever, why all of these things would suddenly just start falling down. Like, they're not circles, they're rectangles. They're like perfectly stacked up and flat. It wouldn't make any sense that any of them would fall that way. Especially because he clearly picked up like one perfectly by itself. But the message was received. I understood why they did it. And so he's losing his mind. And it was like almost a maniacal laughter moment, because I'm like, this would be cool and like happy in any other situation. Like if it was a Goonies situation or any other thing where the hero did it, and it's just like, he's at the point where it's a little scary, and we don't really know what's about to happen. And he's losing his mind, having this maniacal laughter, and it's like, this is dark. But then of course the kids' parents drop down on the ship. Also, random funny moment, when their ship came in and like the ground just opens up, I was like, they must not have had this happen in decades, because there were so many people on that spot of land where it's like they must not have known that that's where the ship goes, and everyone was just like, oh crap, we gotta run off this hill, and they were falling down. I was like, huh, that's interesting. It clearly doesn't happen very often. Also, they made a very, very big focus on the ship. When it landed, it was securely locked into place. So I'm sure that'll, play a part in things, in the actual finale. But Jod has his treasure. The parents come down, everyone reunites and everything. Everyone's happy. Obviously their kids are alive. And it's like, okay, there's this moment. He's got his treasure and stuff, and everyone's happy there. I'm like, okay, how does this go? And he just walks up to them and just boom, strikes the lightsaber. And then of course the episode ends. Amazing cliffhanger. It made me mad. But I was like, okay, he's just gonna kill everybody? I mean, he obviously has to, fight his way out. I don't know if he could convince the droids, or it's like, hey, like they're being disobedient to like the rules or whatever. So I'm not sure how any of that stuff is gonna play out. Obviously he had the reference to the droids to be like, hey, I need to contact my ship, and he was, trying to make sure that happened. He, had his backup. So I'm not sure how that's going to end up playing out, where maybe he'll try to pull the mutiny thing. I don't know if he'd call it mutiny, but he would say like, hey, they're being insubordinate. Like, obviously I am whatever role he pretended to take, or whatever they called him. And it's like, hey, this is my job. This is what I'm here for. And they're trying to stop me. So I don't know if they'll be able to convince the droids and be like, hey, especially considering the parents got busted for using that device. It's like, I don't know if the droids would believe them anyway. So it could put them in a tricky situation, because they tried to save their kids, and then they all pretty much got arrested right before they came to the planet. And he could be like, these guys are doing horrible things. It's like, you guys did do that horrible thing where you sent that, sent that little signal up into space. So he could have one up on them just from that situation alone, where they're like, hey, this is a bad guy. It's like, well, we're not going to listen to a bunch of kids that, they're droids. So they'll be like, you went off planet. You weren't supposed to do that. And then their parents definitely did some illegal stuff consistently to the point that they had to run and be stunned as they're running through the forest. So he could have one up on them. Obviously, I don't think he's just going to start dropping people like flies as soon as the finale starts, but I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'm sure they're going to go more the Goonies route. I don't think anyone will actually die. It'll seem like it. It'll come close, but I don't think it's really going to happen. It would be interesting, though. If they killed off one of the parents, that would be absolutely insane. I highly doubt they'd kill off one of the kids. That would be buck wild. But I don't know. It's like, it's constantly like right on the edge. A lot of bad guys have died, but it's like, it's so close. And he's right in the position where he could go 100%, where it's like, he could go buck wild. He has the money. He's looking at this giant vault, and there's hundreds of other or thousands of other vaults full of money just like that. He's going to do whatever it takes. He's there on the planet. He's going to do something crazy if need be. So I'm excited for the finale. I don't know if we should actually expect anyone to die, Jod included. Even if they beat him, I don't know if he would end up being killed off. But there's a whole lot of pirates. I don't know if the finale is going to be as short as the other episodes. Maybe it'll be 40 or so minutes. It would be great if it was actually like an hour-long episode. That would be really, really cool. But I'm curious. Who knows what in the world's going to end up happening in this final episode. I'm definitely going to watch it tomorrow night. Who knows if I'll end up reviewing it the night of. But I'm definitely going to make sure I stay up and watch this one, because I think episode 7 I didn't even watch until this week, and I was just like, once I missed it on Tuesday, I was like, I'll just watch it later. But the finale I'm going to watch for sure. The finale, we've got one more episode. Like I said, I don't know the length, but I'm very excited for it. So we'll see what ends up happening. If everyone lives, or if someone just doesn't end up making it, we'll see what happens. I'm sure, maybe some of the other pirates, maybe they'll end up coming to the planet. Some of them will die. Some random people on the planet might get killed that we've never even actually seen. They're just like running in fear, and the pirates actually come down. It could get really crazy. I feel like if they do that where the other pirates come in, I don't know how I would expect that to be resolved in such a short amount of time, unless the whole episode was like just a quick battle episode. But we'll see what ends up happening. Don't know the length just yet, but I'm excited. It's definitely been a good show so far, and I'm definitely curious to see how they end things out with the dark ending that they have for episode 7. So looking forward to episode 8, of course. We'd love to know what you guys thought about episodes 6 and 7, and of course, your thoughts and theories for the finale, what you guys want to see, what you don't want to see. If, once again, they're not going to kill off all the kids. I don't think they'll kill a single kid. That would be absolutely insane. And if they had to kill anyone, it better not be Neil. Let's face it. It's Neil. Like, you can't kill Neil. He's just too cool like that. So they couldn't, even if they wanted to. But I don't think they will. They already took out 33, which was crazy in itself. Once again, I'm sure they'll rebuild him. They'll have KB do it after the resolution and everything. So we'll still have 33 if we get a season 2, depending on how everything goes out. If they decide to go the route of a season 2, I'm sure 33 would end up coming back. They would end up rebuilding him, and then they go off on another adventure or something. But we'd love to know your thoughts and theories on the finale. Like I said, what you guys want to see, what you guys don't want to see, and all things Star Wars. Because after this, it seems like we got a decent break. I think Andor is April. It might be March, but only a couple of months, so not a crazy break. But I'm excited, and there's been some crazy rumors. Some stuff has come up as far as Ahsoka season 2 and characters that are supposed to be in that. I'm looking forward to it. All these official confirmations and stuff. So I'm looking forward to more news on that. I think the Star Wars Celebration this year is probably going to be really interesting, because I think we're pretty much at the end of this whole era of like all the shows and everything, and we, at least at the very least, well, we know where we're headed as far as movies. We've known this movie's coming out, that show's coming out. Like, there's been a lot of changes, so at this point we know what's coming out. So we'll see if that's official. I think we are, Ahsoka season 2. Obviously Andor is going to be done by the time we have Celebration, and then the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and whatever they're doing with the Thrawn stuff. I'm still waiting for like an official declaration of, is it going to be a series? Is it going to be a series of films? Who knows? I would love it for it to just be a show, so I could just get the whole story. And I think they could do it. If they did it in multiple movies, they could. But that first one would have to be really good to get people back, to do it. I mean, heck, Skeleton Crew itself isn't doing too great. Granted, that's because of the Acolyte. It's, Last Jedi sort of effect, like how that hit Han Solo. Still pissed about that. I wanted Darth Maul. I cried a nerdy little single tear, like Darth Maul is back in live action, and now he's not. Painful, very painful. Favorite character coming back, and it was just taken because Last Jedi killed everything. and then nobody went to see Solo, which is a good movie. It's a good movie. Who knows about Lando? Another show that we knew was coming out. So once again, there's a lot happening in the future of Star Wars, but for now, we have the finale coming up. So like I said, we'd love to know your thoughts and theories on that. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.